Everyone, good evening. Welcome to Ibrox, where we are here at 8 o'clock on a Sunday for a Scottish Premiership game, but enthusiastic about it. Nonetheless, this game, of course, rearranged in large part due to the great Glasgow run. I think it was half marathon today, which I did not do, but I did tear my hamstring doing it 2 years ago. So that's a story for another day. Chris Jack, we're going to speak about Rangers, the Rangers team to face St Johnstone. I'll bring it up on the screen for people to see, and then we'll talk through all the big issues as ever. It's Butland, Tavernier, Suter, Proper, Chefty, Raskin and Diomande in the middle. So Nico Raskin comes in for Conor Barron, who doesn't start for the first time. It feels like in a long time at Rangers. Nadeem Bajrami starts for the first time as an out-and-out number 10. He's behind Cyril Dessers, as expected. Václav Černý does keep his place on the right. Ross McCausland comes in on the left-hand side. The Rangers substitute bench reads Liam Kelly, Conor Barron, Kieran Dowell, Dujon Sterling, Narasho Kasim-Weirjo, Leon Balogun, Hamza Igaman, Yanis Hadji, and Robbie Fraser as well. We'll get to the St Johnstone team before we close the video, Chris. But first and foremost, your reaction to that team. I think the big news that people were preempting was, will James Tavernier be dropped after being taken off early against Lyon? Will Kasim-Weirjo be rewarded with a start? But Clement opts to keep his back four together. What's your thoughts on that, first of all?
I think as soon as the team was announced on social media, as soon as the team sheets came into the press room here, there's one name that everyone is looking for. It's the one that's number 2. It's the one that's got the captain beside it. I think I said in the predicted teams that we had on the site over the weekend, I thought this was the time to take James Tavernier out of the side. I would have liked to have seen Dujon Sterling in there. Manager clearly feels differently. Safe to say it's a big evening for James Tavernier in terms of his season, and I think it then becomes a big evening for Philippe Clement. If Tavernier can repay that faith, the manager can then feel vindicated. If there's questions over Tavernier, I think there's questions over Clement after this.
Is there an argument that there's a comment here that from Billy, which is slightly in jest, but the second part of the comment is he's effectively saying, look, Tavernier does have a role to play, but is there an argument that role has to be an impact sub from the bench just now? Is there not an argument, Chris, that you take a little bit of pressure? Now, we don't know, but presumably one of Kasim-Weirjo or Sterling could have started tonight. Clement didn't say that. He said that Tavernier had to be taken off against Lyon, and he'd cost one goal, and he wasn't having a great game. But Clement said that everyone has to be rotated. He's played a lot of minutes when he was asked about it in his press conference. But is there not an argument that you reduce the pressure on him a little bit? If you take him out the firing line tonight, you put on Kasim-Weirjo, who looked good, who we've not really seen in that position so far. Clement's already said he's going to rotate Tavernier. He started him every game so far. It feels like a little bit to me like he's he could be making the situation slightly easier for all parties.
And I think it feeds into the conversation I think we had round about Dujon Sterling last week after the news about his new contract. The manager saying he has to prove himself over a run of games. This just feels like the ideal kind of evening to put Dujon Sterling in. It shouldn't be tested that much defensively. You'd imagine Rangers will dominate a lot of the ball. If they don't, then something has gone wrong elsewhere on the side as well. It feels like the kind of night where you could play Dujon Sterling, give him minutes, let's see what he can do. We still don't know how good he is at right back. No,
not seen him there.
We'll just not see him there often enough. We know what he can do in midfield. We know what he can do as a stopgap in other areas. If Rangers believe that Dujon Sterling is the next right back, then at some point we're going to have to see him at right back. We're going to have to see how good he actually is. And this just feels like the kind of occasion you play him. And as you say, it takes a bit of sting out the Tavernier situation. If the manager has said since the summer when I spoke to him out in Holland, Tav can't play every game. I know he came off early on Thursday night, but I made the point on Friday. If Rangers had been in that game, if it had been 1-1, for me, James Tavernier's not been replaced. It was replaced because of the circumstances within the game, and it was easier then for Clement to say, well, we'll bring him off, and no player can play every minute. It became easier for him because of the circumstances. I just don't quite understand his words and his actions don't really stack up on James Tavernier, because he's now really the only one. You look at Barron not playing.
Yeah,
Tav is outside of Jack Butland. Tav is the only one you would say should have been rotated, should have been rested before now.
Yeah, Maka says I'd have expected a few ahead of Barron to be dropped. whether Barron's been dropped or not, he's played a lot of football, and I guess this ties into the debate that not starting Tavernier doesn't necessarily mean that you're dropping him. He's the captain. How much emphasis is placed on that? I'd actually quite like to see Cherney, who obviously missed that big chance in midweek. I'd quite like to see him with a Castle Weirjo or a Sterling or a different profile around him. I feel that right-hand side could do it with a different profile behind the winger at points. But if you take Barron in particular, there's a comment here as well saying Chris Joshua can won't be asked if he's still looking for number 6 in the free agent market. When Clement was asked about that, he said that Nico Raskin, to Greg's point, he said that Nico Raskin was an option in there. He was one of the players who he thought could play at the base of midfield. I didn't expect him to start tonight, but he does come in for Connor Barron. I don't mind that. I think that Barron had a mistake in midweek. He started really well. It's easy to forget that he's still a young player who was an important player, but not a vital player for Aberdeen last season, and he's going to need that burden taken off him at points. But does that not kind of, again, the point that we've made 3 times in a row now, you need to rotate players. Clement said he's going to do it at right back. He's not so far, and in midfield, it's an opportunity probably to see Raskin in the deeper role, Chris, tonight, which will be interesting because you'll see more of the ball than he would in the kind of higher of those midfield double pivot positions.
Answer Greg's point first and foremost. I would be really surprised if Rangers now go and sign MD. I think that free agent market's obviously been known since the transfer window closed. If they were going to do something, if they're going to bring another player in, it would have happened before now. No, this is the group that Clement was going to work with until the January window opens. I think we both agreed towards the end of the window that another midfielder would have been advantageous to this squad. I think we both like to see another profile of midfielder come in there. It feels like it's going to be Barron or Raskin. I don't think we'll see many occasions where you see Barron and Raskin playing, just because the makeup of how Clement likes his midfield. As you say, I think it's a real chance for Nico Raskin. He came in last week, obviously got taken off at half time. I don't think he was that bad that he deserved to be hooked at half time. I don't think he was absolutely terrible in that first half. And you then look at the change, and obviously Kieran Dowell coming on. You could argue slightly more attacking, but is Dowell really bringing a whole lot more to a side than Raskin would have done with another 20, 25 minutes? And for me, no. So I do like Raskin. I think he's still got something to offer the squad. Games like tonight, though, I think, as I've said a number of occasions, when he gets his chance, he really has to start taking them now.
I'm interested to see how he does, because Clement, when he was asked about it, he was asked about it by Stevie in the press conference on one of the days this week, Wednesday, and he chose, instead of saying that Raskin was just building up minutes, he said it was a tactical discussion. I quite like that from a manager in a sense, because they're not lying to you, they're being quite straight-faced. I'd imagine if you're a player, you could probably appreciate when a manager said actually he's just building up his fitness, but he'll probably be in a slightly different role to the one that we saw him in against Hibs, because as you say, his partner in Diomande and not Barron. Unless Diomande is the one who drops back to the number 6 position, which is also a possibility, but I think it's more likely to be Nico Raskin in there. Chris, one of the positives, maybe the only positive on Thursday night, which was bad. Let's not forget that. We're here a few days after that. Yes, the stats after showed that Rangers created a lot of chances, and yes, they did early on. Equally, it felt like that was a game where Leon, if they wanted to, could have run away with that more in the second half. Nadim Bajrami, the thing that stood out to me so far about his game is he can see a pass and he can weight it better than anyone else probably in that squad. And tonight, although at times I think coming off the left-hand side's worked fine for him because he's got Shefty to provide width, and it allows him to maybe be, a little bit more unannounced in the pockets that he picks up instead of always being tracked by the opposition's defensive midfielder. But this is, in theory, his out-and-out favoured position. So what are you expecting to see from him tonight, especially as he has got a winger on either side?
Looking to see him move through the gears to produce a higher level of performance, and that's no slight on what he's produced so far. I think he's been really, really effective so far. He has looked good. He has come and made an impact. Also scored the goal in Malmo. As you say, I thought he was the only bright spark from Thursday. He was by far and away Rangers' best outfield player. Looked the only player in the side capable of actually creating something and actually bringing something to that forward line. Seeing him back in that number 10 position, it should bring out the best in him. There should be even more to come from him. As I said earlier on, you would imagine Rangers will have a lot of the ball tonight. They'll have a lot of possession, and you're then looking at that number 10 role, the player that's in that position, whether it was Bajrami, whether it had been Tom Lawrence, whether it had been someone else. The player that's in that position has got such a big role in this side against opposition like St Johnstone tonight. They really need him to to make Rangers tick, whether that's scoring goals, whether it's providing assists. I think having that set up with Bajrami at 10, 2 wingers, and then the striker, that's how we think Lamont wants to set the side up. Two more natural wingers, and the number 10 in behind the striker. Hopefully it pays dividends for Rangers type, because I think there's questions about that front four, but Barrie has the fewer questions to answer, because he has been really impressive so far. On the wings, McCausland, I think we know what he brings. We know what he's good at. We know what he's not so good at. If you're speaking about players who need a big performance, spoke about James Tavernier earlier on. I think Vassar Cherny certainly falls into that category as well. A bit of making up to do after his performance on Thursday night, I think.
I think that's fair to say. Hadji, of course, the bench alongside Fraser, Igaman, Balogun, Casimir, Sterling, Dowell, Barron, and Liam Kelly as well. We'll leave it there. Chris, I should say the St Johnstone team before we go: Sinclair, Raymond, Sanders, Nielsen, Clark, Wright, Essel, Smith, Sprangler, Kirk, and Kimpy Oka. Of course, St Johnstone recently under new management as well, so that will be interesting to see. We'll leave it there. We'll be back after. I think it's fair to say that Rangers Clermont could probably do with a good result tonight after Thursday night. He makes the big decision with James Tavernier keeping his spot at right back. A lot of narratives as ever to unpick. It will be live after the press conference at some point. Do join us then. Until then, if you're not subscribed to the Rangers Review, you can do so on the ticker below. We'll be back later on. Thank you for joining us, and we'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.